Welcome, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice 11.2, and we're playing as the United States. And I've got several questions, and a few of them I remember since last weekend. One of them is, who was I talking to while playing, while making the episode? And yes, many of these episodes right now for this series are made live on Saturday mornings, my time out here in the Pacific. And you can join us then if you wish to. But that's who I'm talking to when I'm talking to people in chat. So there is that. Now we've invaded down here in Somalia. No, not Somalia, Sudan. Somalia's down here. And we're pushing against the Italians here. And way out here in the Pacific, we are invading Midway. We do have shore bombardment from a lot of battleships, and we even have some ground attacking from some carrier aircraft. Don't know if we're going to be successful, but we're going to give it a good shot here. Now, I'm not sure what these do, but we have begin Operation Torch, and we have prepare Operation Torch. You have 2 months to get an invasion force ready for the historical start of Operation Torch, November 8th. At this time, the Allies will declare war on Vichy. You can then invade Vichy-held territories, and above it we have or begin Operation Torch, Vichy. This is the one that declares war on them, well, the Americans. Now, I vaguely knew that there was an option to declare war on Vichy. This is not, or at least I don't think, because getting an invasion force ready, and we're not ready in any shape, means, or formed. To invade, I don't, well, okay, what do we have here? Actual cavalry division with a little light armor, a semi-motorized infantry division, which would be many of the U.S. Another one there, okay. A lot of these are just the HQs. We don't have, I guess, I think I did send, I know we have the cavalry division. Yes, we have the 1st Armored Division here, pressing in Italy. Morning for me, yes. Oh yes, it is a little after 8 a.m. in the morning for me as I'm making this. Okay, well. 2 months now. I just made a save. I wanna try the prepare Operation Torch. One thing I'm wondering is, I'm gonna go reload here quickly. Yeah, no. Because no, I'm not going to get this done in 2 months. What I'm. We have these pitifully few vessels there. What I don't have is invasion craft that I think can do it. Have to come out of Gibraltar. And Spain is at war. So actually, I'm going to. I know I said it just before this, so I'm going to. I gotta quit. So we're gonna go to black screen. Don't worry, everyone. Live or later. Black is all right. We're coming. Not a crash. Just a quick reload. Time zones are funny. Well, I guess so. We live on a globe. It rotates around the sun, and the planet itself is rotating. You know, the moon doesn't rotate. It rotates. It itself doesn't rotate, or does it? Well, no, it doesn't rotate like we rotate, at least, because the moon always has the same side of it facing Earth as it goes around. So as it rotates around us, it doesn't spin on its own axis. I guess is what I should say. It keeps always the same face pointing inward towards us. So it's very weird that way, I think. Okay, so we're not going to do that. But what I think we need to do here is okay. Let's talk a little bit about, and I'm gonna. The United States was an industrial powerhouse, and still is, in fact. It just not as big an industrial powerhouse compared to some other countries, relatively speaking. I mean, it still very much is an industrial powerhouse, but other countries have also become significant industrial powerhouses as well. And it's reduced its industrial capabilities down as well. So both things have happened. I have not, up until this point, not gone to total economic mobilization. I have, this is just those watching, it rotates around us. Yeah, well, yeah, it comes around, it rotates around us, the moon, but it doesn't rotate on its own axis like we do. We're going around, yes. Go back to this. Total economic mobilization. Why haven't I done it? And what's going on here? This is, like I was saying, this is the first time I've ever played the United States in Hearts of Iron 3. Of any real playing, let alone in Black Ice. I was just, I think it's Paul Snodgrass, if I'm getting that right, or something. I was commenting. I was reading the comments before. One Kriegsmarine admiral involved with the U-boat warfare, once he sort of realized that the United States was building transports faster than Germany could sink them, he knew the war was lost at that point. So this was presumably fairly early. He didn't give a date in the quote. I don't know, not quite a quote, but in the reference, shall we say. And he also Drac Chinafil. God, people, you gotta have easier names to say. I mean, you know, I really love your channel if you ever happen to see this, but does really good stuff on naval warfare of various periods. He actually rather likes, and I would wish he would do more stuff involving around the age of sail, you know, like the 18th century. I think he really likes that period. It's probably just not as popular. Well, I know it's not as popular as like World War II or World War I has become, but still, I wish there was more of it. Talking about how by some point in early 43, which we're almost there, the U.S. had 80 destroyers in production, along with all of the, the Liberty ships and everything else. 80 in production. Well, there's certainly the hell ain't 80 destroyers in production. Along with the landing ships, along with all kinds of stuff going on, including industrial expansion going on. And how do I put this? For the concept of something like U-boat warfare to work, it's, hey, for the last 20 or 30 years, because vessels last quite a long time. Actually, even in the age of sail, they did, you know, with wooden vessels. You've built up your, you know, merchant fleet, and yeah, you've done it at, you know, peacetime rates, you know, building sort of as needed and ordered, coming out, not rushed, just doing that. You're going to sink the 30 years or so of development in, you know, merchant vessels in a year. Or you're going to sink a good chunk of them in the first year alone, and in the second year you're going to continue to wipe it out. And sure, you're going to build some more, but it ain't going to nearly match the sinking rates, your production rates. Well, the U.S., yes, I know Britain was producing merchant vessels, some, and Canada was helping with some of the production as well. More corvettes and other light vessels, but you know, there was other production going on in naval vessels, but mostly the U.S., and it was just pumping everything out. And capital ships, whether they be carriers or battleships, were also something to be built in peacetime, because they would take years to build. And if you're going to build a shit ton of them, you know, 30 battleships or whatever it might be, okay, you know, one or two come out per year over time, and then you have your big naval battle and 2/3 of them are sunk. Well, what are you going to do? You're done, you know, you're done. Well, you know, that's what, at least in the naval field, because that's what the Battle of Jutland was supposed to be. Jutland, out here, the you know, the clash between the British home fleet and the German high seas fleet. Now, it was very indecisive of a battle. I mean, Germany won it, shall we say, tactically, in that it did more damage to the British. The British won it strategically because they, their strategic goals, and it was, the Germans really did minor damage overall. Both sides did minor damage overall to the other's fleets, but in that it kept the Germans bottled up in port for the rest of the war. So it it was not, a Pyrrhic victory in that they lost a lot of vessels. No, they lost a bit, damaged more, but the Germans didn't do anything else. And then you can jump back, and that was 1916 or something. Hello, Extreme Finger. How you doing? And then you have 1905, the Straits of Tsushima here. The Japanese completely sinking the Russian high seas fleet. I think like one or two vessels somehow escape, but they sink everything else, and that ends, functionally ends the Russo-Japanese War, because mostly I would say, and I'm not an expert on the war at all. It's sort of a stalemate out here, and Russia knows that it can't overpower the Japanese with land power. At this point, it's just too far, when it's, wild east, if you will, instead of the wild west, to support more. And with the sinking of their big fleet, Japan was going to be more free of action, and it would just end up continuing more and more in Japan's favor. So Russia, ends the war there. So those are what everybody thought. And you look back at other fleet actions. That's what the fleet. Once you lose that fleet, your naval war is done. So if you really are, like World War One, for Germany, the naval war really didn't matter. It does, because had Germany been able to defeat Britain, not that they would have necessarily been able to like invade Britain or something, but they could have escorted massive amounts of merchant vessels to America early enough on, before America gets involved in the war and before submarines start sinking ships, that Germany could have better trade situations and such. So it does matter, but it's not the real deciding point on the battlefield, if you will. So, but the U.S. is able to, and then so looking at the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan envisions sinking. Now they didn't get the carriers, obviously, but envisions sinking. Well, we just sunk your fleet. We won. Now what, guys? Let's work this out, because Japan wanted to negotiate a settlement. Would there have, negotiations been more than what they were asking for in the, pre-war negotiations, or would they have wanted more territory, wanted the Philippines or whatever? I don't know. But what that would have shaken out, or what they would have thought. But no, America is able to just produce the hell out of things, where Germany can't even get their one carrier produced. Italy is trying to produce some more. Japan, I think, produces two carriers during the war, the Taiho and one other, I believe. Pretty good carriers. So, America's just able to produce it. Well, we're not here. We're not doing this now. And so I was expecting, and I know this is sort of long-winded here, but I was expecting more events to happen than have happened that would boost, America's production capabilities. Like, we've had events that produce or increased resources, and so we have so far have not had them. And I think by November 42, a year into the war, historically at least, or approximately so, they should have showed up, and they haven't. So I'm a little disappointed. Now, I take words seriously. So when I see words like basic mobilization, full mobilization, war economy, total economic mobilization, I take them seriously. I don't see ever in America during World War II total economic mobilization. I see that around this time, maybe a little later, in Germany, when they declare it. I see Japan a little after this time, when they really start realizing things aren't going well, start to head in those directions. Britain, maybe already sort of there. Now, the difference between full mobilization and war economy. Okay, so, plus 10% on ICs versus plus 50%, plus 25. So 15% more ICs here. I would say the U.S. does move to a war economy. Takes a while, as things should. Things like the auto industry basically shut down for non-commercial civilian production. So things like passenger automobiles basically end production of those. Trucks still continue on, and a lot of them are going to the army, of course. But I do believe there's also commercial trucks continue on. Hello, Lord Samuel. How you doing? So yeah, recent Hoi 4 devlog, they finally, after 6 years, revamped the peace conference. I heard a little bit about that, and now they're also... Oh, and hello, Rhaegar. U.S. is falling apart because of lack of industry. Right. You're absolutely right, Rhaegar. And Yoshihisa Shimazu is here. Very good. Hello. So I've been, like I say, I've been waiting for some events that would be America's mobilization. I don't know what the effects of war exhaustion are here. And I have another question. I was recently asked to elaborate what they're doing to make Hoi Black Ice to be more like Hoi 4. I'm sort of forgetting right now a bunch of different effects and things that they're putting into the game. I'm not going to try to enumerate them now, but this, of course, was meant here to have dissent and national unity as effects. War exhaustion is what has been added with Hoi 4 so recently, and it's now here, and it's a tricky thing, war exhaustion. And I'm talking, because we already, like I've just said, we already have national unity and dissent here. So we already have two mechanics. And I wouldn't say there's zero war exhaustion in the United States during its time at war, but I would say, from my limited historical knowledge, there is no significant effect of war exhaustion on the U.S. ability of either producing anything needed, whether it's food for the home front or for the soldiers, or arms production or ship production. I don't see any significant effects that I would term war exhaustion in the United States during the war. I'm not saying people aren't fed up with the war. I'm saying it's not negatively affect. It's not like, oh well, hey, you've been working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week at the factory for 2 years, and now your job quality, the production quality is now crap, or something like that, like slave labor type situations. And so, diminishing returns. I don't see any of that. And I do see the one sort of military war exhaustion was the revolt, if you will. I mean, it's never an actual revolt, but the sort of threatened revolt might be the term, of the American forces that win here in Europe, when they're basically sort of informed, well, we'll now get ready to move over and we're going to go invade Japan, because of course the planners didn't know about the atomic bomb, and even the few at the very, very top might have known, they don't know the effects of the atomic bomb is going to have on Japan. And the soldiers here said, no, our war's done. We signed up to fight a war, and we were the ones sent to Europe. Not so much they got to pick Europe. No, they were sent to Europe. The other guys, whoever they may be, they get to go fight Japan. And I'm not an expert I keep saying this because I'm not. Hopefully, I'm sort of, let me see if check up in chat. I know I'm going on and on. Make right move, certain. Hello, Bob is cool. How you doing? Is there something I missed up here? You can now grab capital ships. Oh, and peace conferences. Okay. I'm not terribly fond of their peace conference system because I'm more into the historical based conferences or settings, but that's another whole topic for another time for me to get onto. But right now, this war exhaustion. I think the planners were thinking that we have some, and they were, first class, well trained divisions available in Europe that were highly experienced, and they were not, unlike my understanding, a bunch of the Soviet divisions. They weren't exhausted units, and we're talking about war exhaustion, meaning the Soviets lose huge numbers of men. Huge numbers, and I'm several different numbers are popping in my head, but I don't want to say because I'm probably going to be very wrong. But very large numbers of men, just in the sort of the Battle of Berlin and the elements around the Battle of Berlin. Not just have millions of men involved in that, but lose large numbers of men just in that. So there really is not that situation, because there are fights inside of Germany. Operation Varsity, I think, happens around here, the sort of unnecessary major airborne invasion that it doesn't sort of go so great, but it's not so terrible either. It's been a long time since I read about Varsity, but it's crossing the Rhine. So there are fights, but they're not as desperate. The Germans are trying to slow up the Western Allies' advance, yeah, but they're not, fighting desperately like they are in the East to slow down the Soviets. And so they're looking at, hey, we got these great units, we ought to use them in Japan instead of all of the divisions that are back home in the U.S., which have never been to war. There's a bunch of divisions back here that have never been to war. The U.S., again, decides, I think somewhat arbitrarily, to only send 100 Army divisions overseas, because not limiting on equipment or on personnel, but limiting on the ability to supply them and how much shipping they have, including supplying all of the other, transport shipping for the Liberty ships doing all, sending supplies to India that go to China, or supplying the British, or supplying, the all the other allies and whatnot going on. So the U.S. just decides that 100 divisions seems like a round number. That's why I say it's sort of arbitrary. But they have well more than that. I don't know. It's not a huge number more. Well, enough more. That they're the guys who defeat the Germans are like, hey, we've done our job. Not that they were going to like revolt and we got to go home now, but we get to enjoy the victory of get to do occupation duties and that kind of stuff. We don't have to go fight Japan now. So there is that sort of exhaustion. And I'm trying to look to think about the game effects, because we already have things like manpower exhaustion, if you burn up the Soviets by the end of the war. And so I'm looking at the Germans as well. Germany obviously is exhausted by the end of the war, but is it from fighting the war, war exhaustion, or is it from losing the war, being bombed? Having the divisions, all the equipment lost and personnel lost in the Moscow counteroffensive in 1941, or even more losses, Stalingrad, or the about equal access, because you got to throw in the Italians, large number of Italians, losses in Tunisia. That's all of those kind of losses are, yes, war exhaustion, but those are exhaustion or just massive defeats going on here. Just the Battle of Stalingrad was one of the highest but see, as opposed to just simply a generic effect of clicking here and going to total economic mobilization 40 plus 40, and I don't know, there's not a percent, it's on a chart and I don't know what the chart is. War exhaustion, just by going to total economic mobilization. That's sort of what I'm talking about here. Let's see, half of Canada divisions was not sent or retarded most possible during the war. Well, yeah, Canada had its zombie army, as it was actually called during the time. They could conscript people in Canada, but they could not, because of some of their laws, send conscripts overseas. So there was a large Canadian army sitting at home doing absolutely nothing because the individuals did not volunteer to go to the war. I'm pretty sure the Navy was also part of conscription, and obviously those were going at sea. But Canadians, most of Canadians were in corvettes, small vessels doing anti-submarine work, and I don't think many or a high percentage of personnel were lost to that. So Canada did sort of cheap out on the war and getting involved in it. The fact that there were internal issues between French and English, yeah, those are sort of going on there. Why won't you focus on sending spies to Germany? I'll get to that in a moment, but that's a good question, Bob. There is some stuff there. Bombed to oblivion. Yeah, Germany is sort of being bombed to oblivion. And there was a grudge between French and English. Yes, I know in Canada, yes, very much so. But I would have thought, because however you view the Quebecois, the French of Canada, and whatever their, because I know they were sort of royalists when they were sort of broken off, and I don't know what they thought of the French republics and whatnot. But whatever sentimental, emotional connection they have would have been to France, and they would have wanted to see France liberated. It wasn't like they were aligned with the English fighting some sort of French government. That, it's one thing to say, I don't know, I'm jumping around topics, but it's one thing to go say, oh, hey, yeah, like if you're an American and you're of Russian descent, hey, yeah, we're going to go fight the Soviets. Yeah, they all happen to be, or most of them, happen to be Russians, but we're fighting the Soviets. It's sort of like we're Germans, I guess would be maybe a better historical example, I should just go to it, is, hey, we're German Americans. Your papa and mama were born and raised in Germany, and you were born in America, and you sort of speak some German, but we're going to go fight the Nazis. Which, yeah, happen to be, and maybe your cousin may be in the German army somewhere. And there's a lot of cases of that. All of the big sort of generals and admirals like Nimitz and Eisenhower, they were multi-generational in America, going back, I think, like to the Civil War before, as far as I know. At least most of the prominent German Americans that fought against that, high ranking, they weren't like first or second generation immigrants or whatever. They were in there longer, and so you can emotionally go, yeah, we're fighting the Nazis more than we're just fighting the Germans. There wasn't even that split in Canada with the idea of the conscription crisis was a huge matter. Yeah, I understand it was a huge matter there. The First World War, the English openly opened fire on protesters. Yeah, like World War. The French, like the English War, and it doesn't concern us. Interesting. I don't know much how the French thought the French wasn't loyal to the English side. The fact that the French was conquered people during the 70s. Oh yeah, I know they were. Oh, I know they were in the 7 Years' War conquered. But I would have thought there would have been a better appeal to save France and come into the war. Like if either France was an open enemy of the British, or if France was just not involved in the war, I could see that being a bigger and more important issue. But yeah, so looking at Germany, who goes to total economic mobilization. I don't see I don't know what the effects of this war exhaustion is. No, it should be here. This is new to me. Some of these things I don't like what they're doing with black ice, because I don't know what it is, but it's also because I'm trying to think. We have. And just let's call it, because there's some of it is some of it is voluntary foreign labor, literally voluntary. Some of it is conscripted labor, which you could call that slave labor. But if you can, are soldiers slaves? They're conscripted, and I guess the sort of difference is there were French and Dutch and others that for various reasons, including, hey, even though I have a ration book that says I get to have a loaf of bread, I don't have any money for that loaf of bread. I need a job. So they take jobs and get better rations in Germany. Some of it's voluntary. Some of it is sort of France being told that, hey, you've got a labor quotient to fill, find people to send here. And that I would call conscripted labor, in that you're sent to Frankfurt to work in a factory that Germany chooses, but you're sort of put up like an apartment in one of these buildings here, kind of thing. Now, there may be 3 or 4 people living in that apartment. It's not like your private apartment and it's really nice. No, it's there, but it's living amongst the civilian population. You live in the city. You go to work. You have everyone has their Ausweis or whatever, pass or passport kind of thing. It's not like an international passport, but this says, it says you get to be in Frankfurt. You need a special pass to leave the region, so you're controlled. You're not just allowed to go back to France whenever you want to. You're controlled. You have to stay in Frankfurt region, and you're assigned a job. You're living amongst the local civilian population. You go to the job at your assigned hours. You do your work. You get paid. That's sort of the conscripted labor kind of, and I'm sort of simplifying it and whatnot, but that's sort of simplified situation here. I think the food rations for somebody like that are about equal to what the German food ration would be, and similar things like that. And then you have slave labor, which is in a compound with guards, and it's barbed wire, and you don't move unless somebody allows you to move. So that's sort of voluntary, conscripted. And they also, of course, conscripted a lot of people locally to build things along the Atlantic Wall and whatnot. And now those you might be spending a few days away from home, but it's still in your sort of region where you're working, and then you're going back home. So you have so voluntary, conscripted, in slave labor. And slave labor in Germany is partially because of ideological reasons. They're just trying to exterminate the people, so they're working them to death. But I really don't see, in the scale of the wartime period, war exhaustion. I see exhaustion because of the bombings, because of shortage of materials and all these other reasons. I see that exhaustion, but not just because, mentioning like Canada, nation is at war, even though we may not be sending troops overseas, we're going to a war economy, rationing of fuel, rationing of cloth, literally, for making clothes, rationing of food, rationing of whatever. I really don't see that as affecting Canada's, say, production rates or of the soldiers that actually do go in the war, the fighting spirit of the soldiers. So I've sort of objected to this. Yeah, I'll get to Spies Bomb School. Just give me a moment here. We'll do that. So I have not done this, but because we've not, I really think there should be an economic boom for America, and there may be for the AI. But we're going to go over to, and so I would agree that America goes to a war economy. I don't know. Because, if this war lasts 20 years, then I start to see these effects coming in. Monthly war exhaustion. So I don't know what's triggering that. Leadership down, consumer goods during wartime. Well, that's a positive, of course. Daily dissent. Officer recruitment. So, but yeah, here. So we're gonna go here because we just don't have. I know we've spent a lot of time getting over to this, but we just don't have all of this. Consumer goods. So we have to go to that to keep our consumer goods from going up, but it should be massively increasing our war. Okay, well, because we're getting too long, we're gonna end the episode, not the live stream, but the episode here. I know we haven't made any clock movement on it, but I've talked about my feelings on some of the effects of the game and history. So thank you very much. See you next time for even more, more Hearts of Iron.